Ah, Valentine's Day. The day of chocolates, sweetheart candies, love, and friendship. Oh, and also cowboys. Today I'll be drawing some cowboys on Valentine's Day. Simple video, simple title. You clicked on this video, you know what you signed up for. But this time they're gonna be bandits. The first bandit on that list is Richard Montelli, or more affectionately named Punchy by his sharpshooter. As a joke, the flower associated with him was the hyacinth. I specifically picked the colors blue and purple for him because I felt like the symbolisms of those colors in the hyacinth made the most sense for him. He's very loyal to his bandit crew, as well as anyone else he forms a deep connection with. But most specifically the bandit crew, because he's known them for the longest time out of anyone, really. Um, he's not going to be easy to betray them because he's formed a deep connection with these bandits, and it's not just something he's gonna let go on the whim of the day. He's known them for a majority of his life, if not all of his life. So it's a bond that he's not gonna easily break. I actually ended up coloring Richard both twice when I made his portrait because I tried doing a side profile for him. It was nice. It was just wasn't exactly what I wanted from him. And I ended up redoing it in this version and he ended up a lot nicer than he did the first time. Though honestly, if you want to see it, here it is. It's not too bad. It's just not exactly what I was looking for. Sometimes that's a good thing though. You just need to redo things and retry things when they aren't working. And that's okay. Hyacinth can also symbolize death and rebirth. Um, and I like to think that makes a lot of sense with Richard because he's sort of killed off his past life, his old life, to begin a new one as a bandit. He's had to run away from a lot of his past, and in other universes he does that too, but it's especially prevalent in the bandit universe because that's something he really needs to run away from without getting too much into detail. Hyacinth's also closely related to Hyacinthus, because in Greek mythology, while playing discus with Apollo, uh, the west wind Zephyrus actually, out of jealousy, I believe, don't quote me on these things, um, rerouted the discus so that it would hit, um, rerouted the discus so that it would hit uh, Hy- Hyacinthus in the head, which actually was the cause of his death and caused the flowers to emerge from his death, which is a beautiful and sad thing. Although that, um, without getting into too much detail, a lot of Richard's backstory is actually associated with things that were out of his control, out of his grasp. I mean, in his own story, he had to run away from his home because his house caught on fire. Uh, his family, unfortunately, in there were unable to be saved, but Richard had made it out on his own and made it out to live his own life outside of the fire. The purple hyacinth's also closely related to sorrow and desire, as well as forgiveness. Um, the bandits really need. The bandit Richard actually has a lot of things he wishes he could be forgiven for. I mean, he's a bandit. Of course, he's done multiple things, stolen. His nickname Punchy, his reputation doesn't come from just being strong and big. He's quite single-handedly been able to threaten people with just his hands. Um, like most of the bandits, I mean, like all of the bandits, even if he's the, and I quote in big quotations, kinder one, he's not in the slightest kind at all. He's still doing horrific crimes to what is honestly innocent people. But that's the life they live as bandits. They don't really have much of a choice. It's not like they all walked out here and are doing this for fun. I actually ended up coloring Richard first in a shaded style. I ended up shading him in like a painterly style. And here's the result of that. I mean, I think it looks pretty. Now, afterwards, I do come back and actually cell shade him because I thought he would look nicer along with the other bandits and also match better with the other bandits. Uh, I have this cell shading style that I do that is very loosely referenced off of the game Hades. I don't actually know how to shade like Hades, but it's close enough in my style that I'm happy with it for now, and just like I hope to practice more with it so that he actually turns out something semblance of the game because I really like the shading style of that game. Um, but going back in here, I actually just do a whole cell shading thing and put multiply layers on him while also coloring the multiply layers into shades that would actually match with the different parts that I put the shading on. So like the red looks well with purple shading, the yellow looks well with red shading, etc., etc. Um, and I put a lot more light on the flowers because I felt like they needed a better highlight on them. I actually ended up really liking this version a lot better than the other version, and I thought it was nice. The next bandit on our list is Alex. Alexander Hamilton. No. No, just Alexander uh Xavier. He's not a Hamilton reference. Although but in as a bandit and bandit leader, he's actually quite skilled and quite deceitful. Not to say that he lies, but he just knows what cards to play and when to play them and when to keep them close and tightly knit into his hands. So I felt like the best flower that would fit him would be the snapdragons. Because snapdragons are very closely symbols of deception and deviousness. Both are very good traits for our bandit leader, Alex. I believe snapdragons are actually called snapdragons because of the little mouths that they have when you push onto. Okay, snapdragons have the name dragon because when you push onto them, they resemble a little mouth, which I believe sort of conceals the pollen within, which is why it's often associated with deception because it's concealing the actual pollen and the flower, which is very closely associated with Alex, who, like I said before, conceals a lot of parts about himself. He's a very secretive, um, and oftentimes because of this, even the people in his own crew don't know things about him. Though, which one of the three bandits aren't hiding things? Alex is surely one of the three that is hiding the most out of all of them. The thing that unnerves the townsfolk and other people about this bandit is that he's unpredictable, especially paired with Richard and Jet. The three make an unformidable pair that no one really knows what their next move's gonna be. They don't know if they're gonna leave. They don't know if they're gonna come steal more things. They don't even know how or when they're gonna uh, do their shenanigans. Really, they have a sort of hold on this town that they're not willing to let go of. At least not for a little while. Alex carries himself with such a confidence that when you look into his eyes, you know that whatever he's planning, he's going to make work, even if he has to go to Plan B, C, or Z even. And that unpredictable planning is something that makes him terrifying to anyone who crosses his path, especially with two others next to him, listening to his every word. It's not something that people could just shake off. It's not something that people could just forget. I mean, even the mayor of the town seems to have trouble with him. He carries himself in such a way that makes it obvious that he's willing to do anything to have his way and what he wants, really. Um, which is why the deceitfulness and confidence of the Snapdragon fits so well with him and his absolutely terrifying persona and character. To attack and kill a man that is so unnerving and so unafraid, it makes anyone who goes against him just absolutely terrified because they don't know the possibilities and extent of what he's willing to do for what he wants. Like the other bandits, he's unpredictable. He's unknown. No one, multiple times, no one in the town knows their names. No one in the town knows these people. They're all completely new to the town. They're they're just a force that keeps coming back and keeps foiling any plans of jailing the three bandits. Alex also believes in himself that he's constantly on the cusp of death, and that death's practically on his doorstep, so he takes any opportunity he can to do what he wants to, really. He is absolutely wicked and full of himself in some sense. Um, but maybe that's a little mean to say. I wanted the flowers around him to sort of both surround him but also grab onto him a little bit. You'll see I actually changed that left flower like right by his head to start looking more claw-like onto his shoulder, so it kind of looks like he's sort of being grabbed by death. I don't know. I just thought it was a cool idea, and I thought it worked really well with him because of his mentality and how he sort of thinks. He doesn't he doesn't think he's gonna live another day, so he just keeps teetering that line between life and death. It's something almost admirable, but also very, very unsettling about him. It's it's probably his confidence is probably why he's actually followed by the other two bandits. Like, not to mention just his confidence, but also out of the three, he's a lot smarter. I wouldn't say he the smartest. I could say he's the smartest of the three. It, the other two would never admit that to him, but I would say he's probably one of the smarter ones. I mean, each bandit has their sort of the things that they're good at. I feel like Alex is very good at using his mind and using his brain to make sure everything is going as he wants it to. He's sort of manipulative in that way as well. Unfortunately, um, he often also associates himself with the mayor of the town, which that's just calling for a death sentence. But who am I to judge what the bandit does, right? He he's constantly walking this line and is gravitating himself towards this power for reasons But these interactions with the mayor are secret to the town. No one really knows that he does this. It's not exactly like he goes out in broad daylight and just names out the mayor by name and says these things. Because these things are secret, he has more of a grasp on the people around him and the mayor itself. That's not to say the mayor's working with him. Uh, I'll probably talk more about the mayor in their own video. I feel like they are deserving of that. While Alex deserves his time, the mayor deserves their own time because I might want to make a part two to this video. Why not? I think that would be fun. If enough people enjoy that. I mean, if you give this video a like, maybe I'll consider it. Alex sort of puts himself together as this sort of person who's constantly testing people around him. Not a literal test, obviously, but he's pushing people. He's pushing buttons. He's pushing limits. He's constantly trying to figure out how far he can go before things just topple over before him. I think it's just a sort of mentality he has after all this time. It's something. It's one of the traits that are truly terrifying about him. I think out of the three bandits, Alex probably has one of my favorite like sketches. Maybe I feel bold saying that, but I also feel like I do agree with that. He he has very defined shapes, and I was able to really shade him really well. So I really was proud of how I was able to draw him out. Also, keeping that like wicked smile of his on his face, and using the shading to actually define his expression and darken him a bit in a way that makes him more sinister. I'm really proud of myself. I'm allowed to be proud of myself. Um, and you should be proud of yourself. If you you should look back at something today and tell yourself that you did a good job, because I'm sure you did. I think everyone deserves a little pat on the back every once in a while. And if no one else is patting your back, why don't you pat your own back? Why? I think that's a good trait to have. um. Anyway, I also sort of want to reiterate. To say that Alex is leader isn't really to say that like everyone follows his every order. They do follow his orders sometimes. Uh, but the bandits themselves are sort of on equal footing. I would imagine they'd still report back to Alex at times to just say things so he's in the know. But otherwise, both of the bandits, unless they have an outright plan to do something, they all three of them tend to do what they really. Uh, all three of them tend to just do what they want to, unless, of course, they have a plan. In which case, um, they all follow the plan that they're setting out to do. Everyone still has their contribution. They're all, for the most part, on equal footing. Um, if one of the bandits has an idea, they're not suddenly shunned or silenced because Alex is the leader. No, both Richard and Jet can come up with their own ideas and bring it to the table. Just and here's the finished piece. I really liked being able to make his heart more angular and just having the different flowers around him. I was really proud of how I did the snapdragons for him. Last but not least is our last bandit, Jet. Jet Takumi is his full name. Um, Probably one of the deadliest bandits out of the three, even though he's also the smallest of the three bandits. Um, you'd be surprised at his capabilities, really. The flower that was chosen for him is the notorious deadly nightshade. Nightshade is known to be very poisonous and very dangerous, especially because it's an inedible plant. It's not just being known for its poisonous properties. Nightshade is also very well known for a lot of myths that follow it. It's in a lot of different stories and mythos, none of which really closely associate with Jet, so I'm not going to really mention the mythos too much. Um, it's rumored that its name comes from the fact that it likes to grow in shady places, hence Nightshade, which is obviously a darker time of night. Um, all of this very closely associates with Jet as the bandit's sharpshooter. He has a very observant eyes and is able to capture and shoot down any target he puts his sights on. Aloof and mysterious, most the other two bandits don't really know much about Jet. He doesn't really talk a lot about himself. Granted, most of the bandits only know very little about each other. They all have snakes under the bed, if that's the phrase. They all have their secrets that they are hiding from each other. And Jet is no different to this. The other bandits don't really know his motives. They know that he's a good shot and that he is able to use a gun like no other person. That at least out of the three of them know. Also, because he doesn't seem to talk a lot, knows a lot about the town and a lot about the others. He has a lot of information on his belt that not everyone has and not everyone knows about. Jet has a very pessimistic outlook on things, even though he still ends up going along with plans and doing the thing. He very rarely thinks that things are going to work out for him and work out for the others. He has this mindset that things are going to be bad and things aren't going to work out, and no one really understands why. Mostly because they don't know him, but also because he never really explains it. He has this negative mentality that sort of eats away at him as he goes on to this day to day life of his. But despite this negative mentality, he keeps pushing forward and keeps going on. Because apparently there's something that is still driving him to continue on, to keep going. This isn't to say, this isn't me saying that he should just give up. Of course not. But this is me saying that, like, with that negative outlook of his, it's surprising to see him pushing and continuing for something while no one knows what his drives are. It's clearly something big enough that is keeping him along, especially since he doesn't really seem to like the other two. Both Richard and Alex are very energetic, and Jet's practically tired most of the time, or non-social, less social, non-social. Sometimes words are at a loss for me. While the other two seem to stick together out of necessity, Jet seems to understand that. Jet seems to be the kind of person who doesn't have that necessity of needing to be with other people, but he seems to know that things are going to move on a lot faster when he is with the other bandits rather than if he had gone out here alone. Because he's so quiet and uh, because he's so quiet, he tends to be able to listen up and catch on to things that other people don't know. He's able to learn about the talk of the town, go into places unnoticed, unseen, and it's a very good way for the group of bandits to actually get information that they need from the town. Out of the three bandits, Jet is most likely the physically weakest. If you get his weapon out of his hand, he's almost harmless. People have a tendency to underestimate Jet because out of the three bandits, he is one of the smaller ones. He um like apart from just being shorter than the other bandits, he's also has a less muscular build than the other two. He is often described as weak and frail, even though he has this gun strapped to him that gives him his notorious reputation of how he's able to land down any shot he wants to. Him as a person is often seen as weak and seen as how some would oddly describe as poisoned. No one really understands him because he doesn't talk to people. The few who he does talk to is just the other bandits, and if no one talks to the group, no one knows the group, then they don't know anything about Jet. Something notable about the bandit Jet is that he is covered head to toe in clothes. I mean, you could see parts of his neck and parts of his eyes, but his face, similar to Richard, who has the bandana on, and Alex, who has the paint on his face. Jet also wears a mask over his mouth, and the hat, while it doesn't conceal his eyes, it often shades his eyes from the view of anyone else who goes to look at him. He seems to shield himself from what he does and from the other things that are surrounding him. He's very likely to come walking in guns first and ask questions later and take, of course, money from these people. When I was drawing him, I was very careful to make his shading also very much conceal his eyes because he usually has his hat tipped down in a way that covers his eyes. Not, it doesn't cover his eyes. He usually has his hat tipped down in a way so that the shadow covers his eyes. Obviously he doesn't cover his eyes otherwise. That's gonna be a very, very bad way of shooting. um I had a lot of fun doing Jet. I couldn't really figure out the colors I wanted for his heart background. There was a lot of options. I was just messing around with all of them. Eventually, I settled on this really pretty uh, light purple, similar to the actual Nightshade bears. And I thought that was nice. I thought it looked good. I thought it was pretty. And here we have the three bandits. I think they're all turned out nice. Let me know which one is your favorite and maybe if I should do a part two. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you. Bye bye.